And I'm really glad that you mentioned the fact that the Heat made like they did what they wanted 17 days ago. Because let's be honest, in my opinion, if Miami made the trade for Terry Rozier not 17 days ago, if they did it yesterday, there would
Mm,
be a parade in Biscayne Boulevard. Like
mhm.
you can never please Miami Heat fans, in my opinion. But with the fact that you said that they got what they wanted with Rozier, we know that Martin was a tradable asset. I didn't want to let him go if it was unless it was for someone that can help us down low. But here's my question for you, and I think it's kind of a two-parter because now that the trade deadline is over, we know what's coming up next: the buyout market. Everybody's talking about the
Mhm.
buyout
Mhm.
market. A lot of people are getting released. A lot of people are rumored to get released. So here's mine for you, Ethan. We talked about this a little bit yesterday, but I want to know, is there somebody particular in the buyout market that you feel is going to work perfectly with Miami? And does Miami already have their eyes on someone probably with the buyout market?
Well, there are 3 or 4 names, I think, and the first thing is to caution everybody because typically buyout players don't add anything. This is a little bit skewed because Kevin Love was such a perfect fit last year and honestly shouldn't have been cut loose by Cleveland, but I think his pride was hurt that he wasn't playing there anymore. Honestly, they could use him right now. He'd probably be playing ahead of Dean Wade right now, but he struggled from 3 last year and defensively, excuse me, he'd fallen off even more. But typically, buyout players work out like Mike Bibby worked out for Miami. Like it's not usually a place where you can get someone who's going to close for you. And that's the way Miami evaluates things. I always talk about this. Their whole thing about acquisition of players is this somebody that Eric Spoelstra would use? Is this one of 7 guys that Eric Spoelstra would use to close a game? If it's not, they're not going to give up much for the player. So in a buyout situation, you don't typically have to give up much. Now they can give up. They do have a mid-level. They have a vehicle that they could bring someone in if they needed to. So here are the names I would watch. They can't sign anybody because they're over the first apron. They can't sign anybody who's making more than 12.4 million prior to the buyout. So Heat fans are always complaining they don't spend enough. Well, they spent enough to get themselves above the first apron, which limits their flexibility. And mostly the reason that they don't spend is because of flexibility. It's not because of money. It's because they don't want to lose some of these vehicles. And it's another reason why they will not go into the second apron. I don't think under any circumstances. They will make sure that Andy figures out a way to get them under. But the guys I think that the guy I would like them to go get is Thaddeus Young. That would be my preference because I think he can still play a little bit. But beyond that, he's a great locker room guy. He has had that reputation pretty much everywhere he's been. He's very close with Andre Iguodala, who has very positive feelings about the Heat organization and expresses them all the time. And I just think he's a perfect guy to add to that locker room. And I think Spo would use him as a small ball 5. I think he would use him occasionally next to Bam. The guy I think they're going to go after is Gallinari because they have been obsessed with Gallinari for years, and they have a habit of cycling back. Like they got Gary Payton 10 years after they wanted to get him. They thought they had Gary Payton all the way back when they re-signed Tim Hardaway in 1996. They thought they had Gary Payton signed. And by the way, Gary Payton's agent was Aaron Goodwin, who happens to be the same agent who represents Dame Lillard. They thought they had him, and Gary went back to Seattle at the time. They ended up getting him 9 years later, past his prime, but he helped them win a championship. Jake Crowder, they went after for years. Like everybody was making a big deal about, well, they got Iguodala during the COVID season. Their target was Crowder. They were trying to get Crowder forever. Trevor Ariza was another one they had looked at for a long time. There's a long list of these guys. Well, Gallinari, they've almost traded for him at least 3 times. Okay. And the last time that they almost traded for him, it might happen again, but it happened during the COVID season when they made the trade for Crowder and Iguodala and Solomon Hill. Gallinari was supposed to be part of those deals, but he wanted 3 years and they offered him 2. He wanted 3 or 1. They offered him 2, and so they didn't end up getting him. It's interesting because if they had gotten him, he was closer to his prime at that point. I wonder if that might have helped them get over the hump in the finals because they didn't have enough scoring when Goran went out and Bam got hurt. But anyway, it didn't happen. So at this point, I don't know how much Gallo has left. He's always hurt. He's not really their prototype player in a lot of different ways. They've kind of tried to recreate the prototype with Jovic. He's sort of what they want Jovic to become, So I feel like maybe it might be a way to bring him in to kind of mentor Jovic. Kevin's already doing a little bit of that anyway, but that's the guy I would look at. The other one I would look at is DeLon Wright. Um, Obviously, relationship with Darrell. Darrell came back for Udonis's jersey retirement, and Delon was around the Heat organization a lot. I used to see him a lot around there. So they're familiar with him, and he'd give them a point of attack defender. I don't know how healthy he is right now, though. He did give Tyler fits in the playoffs a couple years ago, if you remember. And I think he can add that element. And so, he doesn't make a ton of shots now, but honestly, he could be he might be an upgrade over Josh defensively from what we've seen this year. So he might be somebody that they add to the mix also. Those would be the three names. And the other one that's come up, but I haven't heard anything specific about him with Miami, but he makes sense as someone they would target is Otto Porter. But again, with Otto Porter, the question is how healthy. So those are the four names I would watch. Also, they're releasing RJ Hampton from his two-way. I think they're going to probably promote Alondas Williams to that. He's been tearing it up with Skyforce, and I think there's some concern that he might get poached. But another option is Bouye, who they like a lot of things about him, but there's some things they want to coach out of him. And I think they've done some good. They brought him back after Portland briefly had him actually, and they like him. So they may elevate one of those guys to a roster spot, or they might just give Jamal Cain the the standard contract as well. But I think those of the buyout guys, those are the four guys I would watch, and I would watch Gallinari. I just too much smoke around that for the past few years.